Every single day, from the moment we wake up to the time we go to bed, we are building something. Some people think they are just living, going through the motions of routine. But the truth is, each day is like a brick, and every action we repeat is the cement that holds those bricks together. Over time, those bricks form the house we live in, the house of our character. Character is not built in a single grand act. It is not defined by one moment of courage or one decision of kindness. Instead, it is shaped by the small, almost invisible choices we make every single day. If you exercise honesty today, tomorrow, and the next, you don't just tell the truth, you become trustworthy. If you consistently practice kindness in small ways, it doesn't just make others feel good, it turns you into a compassionate person. The danger is that this principle works in both directions. Negative habits, no matter how small, accumulate the same way. Ignoring responsibilities, lying when convenient, choosing comfort over growth. These repeated actions slowly etch themselves into our identity until we no longer recognize how we became the person we are. What starts as a simple act becomes a habit. What becomes a habit shapes a pattern. And what becomes a pattern forms our character. Think of it like water dripping on a stone. A single drop does nothing. But day after day, year after year, that steady stream cuts through the rock itself. Our habits cut through us in the same way, reshaping us permanently. And unlike the stone, we have the power to decide what kind of grooves those habits carve. The real question is not, who do I want to be someday? The real question is, what do I do daily that makes me that person? Because character is not built in the distant future. It is created in the present, in the daily repetitions that seem small but carry weight far greater than we imagine. So if you want to be disciplined, practice discipline every day, even in the smallest of ways. If you want to be courageous, start with little acts of courage. If you want to be a leader, practice listening, guiding, and serving consistently. Transformation is not a leap, it is a rhythm. In the end, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your habits. The story of your life will not be told by your intentions, but by the repeated choices you made each day. That is how habits build character, and that is why you truly become what you do daily. Fev keynotes of the speech, character is shaped not by single grand actions, but by the small, consistent habits we repeat daily. Positive habits like honesty, kindness, and discipline gradually become core parts of our identity. Negative habits, no matter how minor, also accumulate and define who we become over time. Habits are like water carving stone. They may seem small, but their impact is permanent. We don't become our goals, we become our daily practices. Our habits determine our destiny. Character is not the product of a single defining act or a single decision made in a moment of pressure. It is the outcome of repetition, of consistency, of what we choose to do again and again in the course of our daily lives. Many people imagine that the mark of who they are is written in dramatic gestures, moments of heroism, significant sacrifices, or bold choices. While those moments can certainly be memorable, they are only snapshots. What really tells the story of a person's character is the long film running behind the scenes, the daily habits. Habits are not random. They are the patterns of action that quietly build the foundation of who we are. It is not about what we do once in a while. It is about what we do consistently, because consistency creates identity. Think of someone who is regarded as honest. That reputation didn't emerge from one time they told the truth in a difficult situation. It came from countless instances where they chose honesty even when it was easier to lie or bend the truth. Each of those small choices stacked on top of one another until honesty became so natural that others could rely on it as part of that person's character. The same principle applies to someone known for kindness. A single act of generosity may warm someone's heart, but it is the repeated acts of kindness, the daily thoughtfulness, the consistent empathy that transform a person into someone defined by compassion. Character is like a fingerprint made from thousands of small impressions, each one too small to notice on its own, but together forming a lasting mark. The reason this is so important is because it highlights the power of the small. Too often people dismiss their daily choices as insignificant. Skipping one workout feels harmless. Ignoring one responsibility seems like it will not matter. Choosing to cut corners just once appears to carry no weight. But those small actions are not isolated events. They are votes for the type of person we are becoming. Every repetition strengthens the identity we are building. Just as an athlete strengthens muscles through repeated training, we strengthen our character through repeated action. The discipline of following through today makes it easier to follow through tomorrow until discipline itself becomes part of who we are. This understanding also explains why shortcuts or one-time efforts cannot build lasting character. A person may act bravely in a single moment, but without a pattern of courage, they will not be remembered as courageous. A student may study hard the night before an exam, but without the habit of learning, they will not truly become knowledgeable. A professional may give a brilliant presentation, but without the habit of preparation, they will not sustain excellence. Character requires depth, and depth comes only through repetition. Habits are what move values from being ideas in the mind to being truths lived out in reality. We can see this in every domain of life. In relationships, trust is not built by grand promises, but by daily reliability. In careers, success is not the result of sudden luck, but a steady, persistent effort. In personal growth, transformation does not happen through a single burst of inspiration, but through daily practices that accumulate over time. Habits are invisible builders, constantly working whether we are paying attention to them or not. The direction they build us in depends on what we choose to repeat. Consider the metaphor of a garden. Planting one seed will not produce a harvest no matter how much we hope. But planting and watering a seed every day, nurturing it with sunlight, removing weeds regularly, those repeated actions bring life. Our character works the same way. Each habit is a seed. Patience, honesty, discipline, kindness. If practiced daily, they grow roots deep within us and eventually define who we are. Neglect the garden and weeds grow instead. The same happens when we ignore the importance of daily habits. We leave space for negative patterns to creep in and take root. Ultimately, the idea that character is shaped by small, consistent habits empowers us. It means we do not need to wait for a grand moment to define ourselves. Every single day provides us with countless opportunities to build the person we want to become. The cup of coffee we drink while scrolling mindlessly, or the moment we choose to read and learn, these small differences accumulate. Over weeks, months, and years, they become the story of who we are. And when others describe us, they will not point to a single day, but to the patterns they witnessed in our lives. That is why character is shaped not by one grand action, but by the habits we commit to day after day. Positive habits like honesty, kindness, and discipline may seem like simple actions in isolation, but when repeated daily, they become the very fabric of our identity. Every time we act with honesty, we reinforce within ourselves the belief that truth matters more than convenience. Every time we show kindness, no matter how small, we strengthen the muscle of compassion and remind ourselves that other people's feelings and dignity are worth valuing. Every time we practice discipline, even in small tasks, we cultivate self-control and resilience, preparing ourselves for greater challenges. These habits do not stay as single actions. They accumulate layer by layer until they shape us into people others can trust, respect, and look up to. The fascinating thing about positive habits is that they often start small, almost unnoticed. Telling the truth about a minor mistake at work may not feel life-changing, but it plants a seed of honesty. Choosing to help someone carry their bag may seem insignificant, but it waters the seed of kindness. Waking up early to complete a simple task may not bring immediate recognition, but it nurtures the seed of discipline. Over time, these repeated actions grow into deeply rooted qualities that define who we are. Just as a tree does not grow overnight but becomes strong through consistent nourishment, our identity becomes solid through consistent habits. Honesty, for example, becomes more than just a decision to tell the truth. It evolves into a reputation. When someone has consistently chosen honesty over lies, even when the truth is uncomfortable, others begin to recognize them as trustworthy. Their word carries weight. People rely on them, and that reliability is not built in a day. It is built through countless moments when they could have chosen deception, but instead chose integrity. Honesty as a habit ensures that we are not only trusted by others, but we also trust ourselves because living in alignment with truth removes the inner conflict that dishonesty creates. Kindness follows the same pattern. A kind person is not defined by one generous act, but by a series of choices to care, to empathize, to listen, and to give. It is in holding the door open, offering encouragement, noticing when someone feels left out, or sharing a moment of patience in a world that rushes. Each small act seems minor, but together they transform us into someone who radiates compassion. And when kindness becomes a habit, it ceases to be something we do. It becomes part of who we are. We begin to see the world differently, to feel others' experiences more deeply, and to create spaces where people feel valued. Discipline is often less glamorous than honesty or kindness, but it is just as powerful in shaping our identity. Discipline is built in the moments when we do what needs to be done, even when we don't feel like it. It is in resisting distractions, keeping promises to ourselves, and persevering through difficulty. When discipline is practiced daily, by showing up to work on time, by sticking to commitments, by refusing to give up on a goal, it forms a character of strength and dependability. Others notice it too. A disciplined person is seen as someone reliable, someone who can be counted on not to falter under pressure. Over time, this reputation becomes part of who they are, not because of one major effort, but because of many small, consistent efforts. What makes positive habits so powerful is their compounding effect. Just like compound interest grows wealth over time, repeated positive habits grow character. The first act may be small, but as it is repeated, its influence expands. One day of honesty may not stand out, but 10 years of honesty creates a legacy. One day of kindness may go unnoticed, but a lifetime of kindness changes communities. 1 week of discipline may feel insignificant, but years of discipline can build entire careers, families, and futures. The compounding effect of habits is invisible in the short term, but undeniable in the long term. Another remarkable aspect of positive habits is that they often inspire others. When people witness consistency and honesty, they are encouraged to live with integrity. When they experience repeated kindness, they feel motivated to treat others with compassion. When they see discipline in action, they begin to believe that persistence is possible in their own lives. Positive habits not only shape our personal character, but also influence the culture around us. In this way, they are not just habits, they are ripples that spread far beyond ourselves. What starts as small, deliberate choices becomes natural over time. At first, practicing honesty may require conscious effort. Kindness may feel like a reminder, and discipline may feel like a struggle. But as these choices are repeated, they move from being actions we do to becoming part of who we are. This transformation is the essence of character when doing the right thing no longer feels like a decision, but simply feels like the way we live. Positive habits, therefore, are not just about shaping how others see us, they're about shaping how we see ourselves. They define the inner story we carry about who we are, and that story guides everything we do. Negative habits, no matter how minor they appear, hold the same power as positive ones in shaping who we become. The challenge is that they often creep in unnoticed, disguised as harmless shortcuts or temporary choices. Skipping one responsibility feels insignificant, but skipping it repeatedly creates a pattern of avoidance. Telling a small lie to avoid discomfort may seem trivial, but repeating it gradually erodes integrity. Choosing comfort over growth may feel safe, but doing it every day builds a life defined by stagnation. Habits, whether positive or negative, are never neutral. They are votes cast for the person we are becoming, and when negative ones are repeated, they quietly accumulate into a character we may not have intended to build. The danger of negative habits lies in their subtlety. Rarely does someone wake up and decide to be dishonest, lazy, or irresponsible. Instead, it begins with the smallest compromises. Procrastination starts with putting off a single task. Dishonesty starts with bending the truth just once. Lack of discipline begins with giving in to one impulse. Each of these actions on their own seems inconsequential. But character is not determined by isolated events. It is formed by patterns. And once those actions are repeated often enough, they stop being choices and start becoming habits. Eventually, they harden into part of our identity. The human brain reinforces whatever we repeat. Each time we act in a certain way, we strengthen neural pathways that make that behavior easier to repeat next time. If we avoid challenges, we train our mind to choose the path of least resistance. If we ignore responsibilities, we teach ourselves that avoidance is acceptable. If we lie to protect ourselves, we normalize deception. Over time, these repeated actions create automatic responses, so much so that we no longer even recognize them as decisions. We simply live them out. At that point, the habit is not just something we do, it is who we are. The real cost of negative habits is revealed in their long-term consequences. A single unhealthy meal does not harm us, but daily poor eating creates disease. One day of skipping work may not ruin a career, but consistent neglect destroys professional trust. A single angry outburst may be forgiven, but repeated loss of control creates a reputation that damages relationships permanently. The danger is not in the single act. It is in the accumulation, the gradual shaping of identity until one day we realize that we are defined by the very behaviors we once thought were harmless exceptions. Another subtle trap of negative habits is that they are self-reinforcing. For instance, procrastination creates stress, which often leads to more avoidance. Dishonesty requires more lies to cover the first, creating a web that becomes harder to escape. Lack of discipline makes life harder, and the difficulty often tempts us to abandon discipline further. In this way, negative habits not only shape our character, but also trap us in cycles that make positive change feel more difficult with time. The longer they are allowed to persist, the stronger their grip becomes. But the most profound effect of negative habits is not only how others see us, but how we begin to see ourselves. A person who repeatedly gives in to laziness may begin to believe they are incapable of hard work. Someone who consistently avoids responsibility may start to view themselves as unreliable. A person who often lies may eventually lose their own sense of truth. These self-perceptions are dangerous because they become self-fulfilling. When we see ourselves in a certain way, we act in alignment with that belief, further reinforcing the habit and the identity it creates. This is why awareness is critical. Recognizing that even small negative habits accumulate into character is the first step in breaking their power. They may not seem urgent in the moment, but over time, they leave permanent marks. Just as positive habits compound into strengths, negative habits compound into weaknesses that shape not only our behavior, but our entire life direction. Character, therefore, is never built by accident. It is built by repetition. And if we are not intentional, the repetitions that define us may be the ones we least desire. Habits are often underestimated because they appear so small and ordinary, but they carry within them an extraordinary power, much like water dripping on stone. One drop of water is nothing. It makes no visible change. But when the drip continues steady and consistent day after day, it carves through rock itself. What once seemed immovable and unchangeable is reshaped by the persistence of something as soft and unassuming as water. Our habits work in the same way. A single action may seem insignificant, but repeated over time, it engraves itself into our character, shaping us permanently in ways that are often invisible until years later. Think about the person who decides to read just a few pages of a book every night. On the first evening, it feels like almost nothing. On the second, still minor, yet repeated for weeks, months, and years, this simple habit transforms them into someone knowledgeable, articulate, and thoughtful. The change is not sudden, but gradual, almost invisible until it became undeniable. Now compare this with someone who neglects reading, who instead chooses distraction every night. That choice, too, though small, repeated over time, engraves itself into the mind, shaping a different kind of person, someone less informed, less prepared, and less able to think deeply. Neither outcome is the result of one grand decision, but of countless small ones dripping steadily into character. This is why habits cannot be dismissed as trivial. Each repetition deepens the groove, making the action more natural and automatic. Just like the path worn into the ground from footsteps, repeatedly crossing the same spot, our habits wear paths into our identity. Eventually, those paths become the routes we naturally follow. Discipline becomes easier for the person who has practiced it daily. Dishonesty becomes effortless for the person who has lied repeatedly. Kindness flows naturally for the one who has cultivated it habitually. The carving of character is not dramatic but consistent, and consistency is always stronger than intensity. The metaphor of water also reveals another truth. Habits may seem weak in the moment, but time makes them powerful. A drop of water is fragile, easily brushed away, incapable of breaking stone in one instant. Yet time transforms weakness into strength. The same is true for us. Waking up early once will not make someone disciplined, but waking up early for years will. Speaking the truth once does not make someone honest, but practicing honesty consistently will. Resisting one temptation does not make someone strong, but repeatedly choosing integrity creates unshakable strength. It is the relentless rhythm of repetition that forges identity. What is striking is how habits not only shape what we do, but how we see ourselves. The person who exercises daily begins to think of themselves as someone who is healthy and strong. The person who practices learning every day begins to believe they are intelligent and capable. On the other hand, the one who neglects responsibilities consistently may begin to see themselves as careless or unreliable. These self-perceptions then guide future actions, further deepening the grooves already carved. In this way, habits are not only actions, they are the architects of our self-image, chiseling away at who we believe we are. This carving effect also explains why change can be difficult but not impossible. Just as it takes years for water to cut a channel through stone, it takes repeated action over time for habits to shape character. If someone wishes to change, they must redirect the drip, creating new grooves. At first, it feels awkward and unnatural because the old grooves are deep and familiar. But with persistence, new patterns form, and eventually the water carves a new path. This is why lasting transformation is never about a single resolution or burst of motivation. It is about creating small, sustainable habits that, over time, reshape the person completely. The permanence of habits is both a warning and an encouragement. If we allow negative habits to persist, they will carve away at our potential until they leave us with a character we did not intend to build. But if we cultivate positive ones, they will engrave into us qualities of strength, wisdom, and compassion that remain with us even when life is difficult. Habits like water do not ask for permission. They simply continue, quietly shaping us until one day we see what they have created. The choice we have is not whether habits will shape us, but which habits will do the shaping. We often imagine that we will one day rise to the level of our goals, that when the right moment comes, we will suddenly find within ourselves the strength, wisdom, or discipline to become the person we want to be. But the reality is far less dramatic and far more practical. We do not rise to our goals. We fall to the level of our habits. A goal may give us direction, but it is our habits that carry us forward step by step toward that destination. Without the daily practices that align with our aspirations, goals remain dreams, lofty ideas floating in the distance, never anchored in reality. What determines who we become is not what we intend to do, but what we actually repeat every single day. Consider the person who sets a goal to be physically fit. The goal itself is powerful. It creates vision and motivation. But in the moment of action, it is not the goal that wakes them up early to exercise. It is the habit they have built. Without that habit, the vision of fitness remains only a picture in their mind. The same applies to a student who wants to graduate with distinction. The goal of success may inspire them, but it is the daily habit of studying, of reading, of asking questions that eventually transforms that vision into reality. Goals point to the destination, but habits are the vehicle that take us there. Without the vehicle, the destination is unreachable. This is why people so often feel disappointed in themselves. They set goals with energy and enthusiasm, but when life becomes busy, they fall back not on their intentions, but on their routines. A person may have the goal of becoming a better communicator, but if they do not practice listening daily, if they do not consistently engage in honest conversations, the goal never materializes. Another may set a goal to save money, but if their daily habit is impulsive spending, the goal collapses under the weight of repeated actions that contradict it. Habits expose the truth. It is not our ambitions that define us, but our patterns. The significance of habits also lies in their quiet, invisible nature. Goals are visible. They are written down, spoken out loud, celebrated, and shared. Habits, on the other hand, happen in silence, often unnoticed by others, sometimes even unnoticed by ourselves. Yet these unnoticed actions are what write the story of our lives. A writer who commits to writing a page every day will produce a book, while one who dreams of writing but never forms the habit will remain unpublished. A musician who practices their instrument daily will improve, while one who aspires to greatness without daily practice will never progress beyond wishful thinking. What we become is not what we hope for, but what we practice. The relationship between goals and habits is not adversarial, but complementary. Goals give us the why, but habits give us the how. A person who dreams of being generous must form habits of giving regularly, not just in rare moments of inspiration. Someone who wishes to lead must cultivate daily habits of responsibility. Listen in decision-making, not wait for the title of leader to suddenly make them capable. Habits prepare us for the moments when our goals demand action. When opportunity comes, we do not rise to the occasion. We simply perform at the level of the habits we have already built. Another way to understand this is to think about athletes. A runner may set the goal of winning a race, but victory is not achieved on the day of the competition. It is determined by the countless habits built in training long before the event. The repetition of waking up early, eating right, running daily, And maintaining focus is what allows the athlete to perform when it matters. The same applies to every field of life. We do not achieve excellence because of a single burst of effort, but because habits have trained us to act with excellence consistently. This truth is both sobering and empowering. It is sobering because it removes the illusion that intention alone is enough. Wishing to be kind, disciplined, or successful does not make it so. Only daily practice turns those wishes into reality. But it is also empowering because it reminds us that we do not need to wait for some grand event to begin transformation. Every small action counts, and each day gives us the chance to align our habits with the person we want to become. If our daily choices reflect our desired character, then eventually that character becomes ours. In the end, the legacy of a person is not written by their goals, but by their habits. A goal might be the spark that starts the fire, but it is habits that keep the flame alive. When people look back at our lives, they will not remember what we intended to do. They will remember what we consistently did. It is the repeated daily practices, both seen and unseen, that define us. This is why we cannot separate our destiny from our habits, because ultimately, we do not become what we dream about. We become what we do every single day. When we step back and look at the bigger picture, it becomes clear that our lives are not shaped by chance, nor are they determined by a few isolated decisions. They are sculpted by the choices we repeat, the habits we nurture, and the patterns we live out each day. Character is not a sudden revelation. It is a slow construction built brick by brick through the consistency of our actions. If honesty, kindness, and discipline become part of our daily rhythm, then they become part of us. If we allow small compromises and negative habits to take root, they too will define us, often more powerfully than we realize. The truth is simple but profound. We do not rise to the height of our goals. We settle into the depth of our habits. Goals give us vision, but habits give us identity. They determine not just what we achieve, but who we become in the process. The question is never, what do I want someday? The real question is, what am I doing today that makes me that person? Because the story of our lives will be told not by our intentions, but by the routines we lived, the habits we formed, and the character we built through them. So if you wish to know your future, look at your habits. If you wish to build a life of integrity, courage, or wisdom, begin not with grand gestures, but with small, consistent actions. For in the end, it is the ordinary choices of today that become the extraordinary character of tomorrow. You become what you do daily.